Namaskar. Welcome to the new session. We need to continue on pranayam. Uh, in the last session, I was telling you about the nostrils and how nostrils are so important in pranayam. And I also made a statement that rather than going to digital pranayamas by using the fingers and the nostrils, for a classical student, there is a long way to go, explore, get educated, get qualified, and get empowered before you embark upon those pranayamas which are called Surya Bedan, Chandra Bedan, Nadi Shodhan, or Anuloma Pratiloma, where we use the hand on the nostril, fingers of the right hand on the nostrils. And I wanted you to experience how nostril is a very high-tech organ. Uh, the last lesson I told you to go through the sound forms, those 335, 340 sound forms, and see how the nostrils act, respond, participate, work differently. Nasal profile, like a very veteran actor who can depict so many emotions on the face, and he can be showing so many faces, which is why he is called a very good actor. Nostril is like an actor. It has so many profiles which you can experience by prana kriyas used, nama kriya used. So I told you, made a running reference, passing reference in the last session, that start inhaling or exhaling by using namas. Ram, 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 Ram. While you inhale and exhale, watch your nostril, sense your nostril, understand the participation of nostril, profile of nostril, configuration of the nostril, figure of nostril. Then Krishna, 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 Krishna. Hari, 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 Hari. So that's a famous nama called Taraka Nama, Rama Krishna Hari, or Rama Krishna Hari Govinda. So you can also do breath with Govinda, 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 Govinda. So there are so many names such as Achyuta, Ananta, Govinda, Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Mukunda, Rishikesha, Padmanabha, Damodara, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, Vasudeva, Panduranga, then Narsimha, Parshurama. So there are so many names of Lord Narayan, there are so many names of Lord Shiva, there are so many names of Shakti, and each deity which the Indian mind worships has countless namas, and each nama you will see that the breath goes through different process. In breath and out breath go through different processes by merely the nama, silently uttering these namas, not orally, not by Vaikhari, but by Madhyama Vani. Silent utterance of these namas, you will see that the nostrils have different gestures, different profiles. For each nama, it will be changing. So that is something that is a marvel that a student, a curious student must attempt. And then understand the marvel of the nostril, that we have so many kinds of in-breaths and out-breaths because of nama, because of swaravarna, which is why it is called pranayama. So it will be quite revealing if you do Rama inhalation, Krishna inhalation, Rama exhalation, Krishna exhalation, Rama inhalation, Hari exhalation, Rama exhalation, Hari exhalation, Krishna inhalation, Hari exhalation, Krishna inhalation, Hari exhalation. So you will compare between Rama, Krishna, Rama, Hari, Krishna, Hari, both for in breath and out breath. And of course, you can then assume that the stambhana or retention also would be changing. So it's really marvel when it comes to pranayam. In pranayam, we must take recourse to swaravarna vyanjanas, or we must take recourse to namas. So it becomes amantraka, and some of the namas are mantraka itself. They are called taraka mantras. Like Rama is a taraka mantra, Rama Krishna Hari is a taraka mantra, Sri Rama Jai Jai Ram is a taraka mantra. It has become taraka mantra. Achyutananta Govinda has become taraka mantra. So it can become samantrak pranayam or amantrak pranayam by taking recourse to prana kriyas. And it is worthwhile trying to understand, read the nose, nasal proximity, nasal vicinity when you use these prana kriyas by way of swaravarnas or by way of namas or by way of mantras. So that must be experienced, and then we will become familiar with the marvelous nasal organ which has so many processes for in breath and out breath and of course retentions. That will also qualify us, that will also empower us, which is so important to be going for pranayama. So I made that commencement in the last session that you must all try to understand these nose before we use the fingers on the nose. And see, the fingers are not to be placed on the nose and nostrils. Like in an instrument, musical instrument, we don't place the fingers on frets or on the strings. We play the instrument with those fingers. So in pranayam, we need to play the nasal part that we contact with our tips of the fingers. We need to play pranayam. So understand this kind of verb. If you are using fingers on the nostrils, you are not supposed to do that pranayam, which is called Surya Bedan, Chandra Bedan, Nadi Shodhan, Anulom, Pratilom, etc. You will have to play your fingers on the nostrils. That's not just placing the fingers, which is done today as a mockery. Block one nostril and inhale from other nostril, block the other nostril and exhale through the other nostril, etc. It is mockery. It's not placing the fingers, not merely placing the fingers, not just blocking the nostril with placing the fingers. We have to use the fingers on the nostril. So pranayam digital is really it is played on the nostrils. The fingers have to be differently placed. So you can imagine, if Rama is one kind of in-breath and Krishna is another kind of in-breath, you can't use the fingers identically. So for every nama, if the in-breath, out-breath is going to change, such as Rama, Krishna, Hari, Govinda, Achyuta, Ananta, Keshava, Madhava, Vamana, Rishikesha, Padmanabha, Damodara, Narsimha, Parshurama, then Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Aniruddha. These are all those names of Narayana, so many names of Shiva, so many names of Shakti. So every name, the breath is going to change. If the breath is going to change, you can't place fingers identically for every name. The placement of the fingers will differ for every name, because the nasal position, participation, involvement changes for every prana kriya. So therefore, it is like playing an instrument where you need to have skill in the fingers, deftness in the fingers to be playing melodious music on instrument. or sonorous music on the instrument. You just can't place your fingers like you do on a keyboard. So, the point is, a lot of preparatories are there before you really take your right hand fingers on the nostrils classically. Unlike today, it is taught quite immediately after few sessions, or perhaps right from beginning. They will say inhale from the right, exhale from the left, exhale from the right, inhale from the left, etc. Where they just have to block the nostril, plug the nostril, close the nostrils, and deviate the septum, disfigure the nose. Nose is such a tender organ. The skin of the nose is also tender. Your fingers also need to be tender. So it is playing the fingers on the nasal membrane, outer nostrils. We don't insert the fingers in the nostrils for digital pranayam. We keep them from outside. So there must be tenderness, deftness for such pranayam. Anyway, what I want to emphasize is that do not be hastening to do the digital pranayamas. There is a long way to go with open nostril breathing, and before you go for that, what I instructed in the last lesson, which today also I said, just try to watch your nostrils, how it is a wonderful actor, versatile actor for each kind of in-breath and out-breath by prana kriya. If you recall, last time I told you about the Prithvi Tattva, Ap Tattva, Teja Tattva, Vayu Tattva, Akasha Tattva, Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Hum. Nostrils were changing. Expression of the nostril was changing, like an expression of an actor. So therefore, become familiar. Study the nose in various prana kriyas. Study the nose from Atuksha prana kriyas. Study the nose in those countless nama kriyas. Then you will know how versatile is nostril as an organ. It has so many origins of countless rivers, so many courses of rivers, and so many ways to have the mouth of the river. So a lot of observation has to take place of the nostrils. Unlike in fashionable pranayam today, they just go on watching the chest. They want to watch the chest, because we know chest responds well to in-breath and out-breath. Chest dilates and distends, opens and relaxes, comes up and goes down. And therefore, a neophyte will be watching the chest for breathing. That is perfectly right. Then you have to watch the abdomen for breathing. You have to watch the back for breathing. And you have to watch the face for breathing. You have to watch the brain for breathing. And you have to watch the nostrils in breathing while there is prana kriya on. There are so many prana kriyas available. So nasal study has to take place without fingers being used on the nose. That's what I want to convey to you. Anyway, the pranayam in consumer process, why do we do pranayam? We want to feel relaxed. We want to feel fine. We want to have clarity of the mind. We want to have relaxed mind. We want to have sober, sedate, passive, placid mind. That's why we do pranayam. That is not why pranayam is mentioned in the texts and even in classical approach. If the yogis and the saints and seers were doing pranayam, they were not doing the pranayam to have placid psychological mind, quiet, serene psychological mind, relaxed psychological mind. Yoga in classical sense doesn't come for such states of minds which we seek in our consumeristic era. Everywhere we are becoming more and more consumeristic. What is good for me? Tangibly good for me. I can sense the goodness. Wherever I can sense the goodness, I will say it is very good. If I don't sense the goodness, I will be little apprehensive in admitting that it is good. So we are making very, very sensory pranayam, sensual pranayam. Sensually, we want to feel quiet. Sensually, we want to feel relaxed. Sensually, we want to feel serene, sublime, sedate, quiet, passive, etc., etc. But that is not why pranayam is mentioned. So we have no idea if we are in popular practices of yoga or as a popular mind practicing yoga, we will never have clue why pranayam is really prescribed in the scheme of yoga. Whereas Patanjali says that pranayam, the efficacy of pranayam, what is the effect of pranayam? Try to have this inquiry. About asanas we saw, tato dvandvana bhigataha, non-dual state of mind, unafflicted state of mind, unafflicted state of dualities to the mind, insulated to dualities, is the outcome of asanas in classical sense. Not physical fitness, physical well-being, overcoming some symptomatic problem, overcoming some disease. Today yoga has become so remedial. And the yoga propounders today are promising every kind of solution to your health problem. But that is not why asanas are there. If you look into Patanjali's scheme of things, nowhere he says, by asanas there is roga vritti nirodha, that you mitigate diseased conditions of the body. Nowhere does he say that. So tato dandvana abhigataha prayatna shaitilya anata samapattibhyam. Asanas fructify by samapatti condition, absorption kind of condition, samapatti kind of condition, and to the extent of infinitude, absorption in infinitude. So the asanas are really done when you have such a state of mind, or through the asanas you must approach such a state of mind. Then what about pranayam? Tatah kshiyate prakasha varnam. Prakasha means inner light, the Atma Jyoti. What is it that it is covering, that Atma Jyoti? Which is clouding the Atma Jyoti? Why is it that we don't have spiritual luminosity? Why don't you experience a spiritual luminosity? It is because it is all overcast condition there. A thick clouds of Rajatama gunas, kleshas, vasanas. So these are enveloping that lamp. When a lot of carbon collects around the glass of a lantern, you don't get good light. So that's why you clean that glass, then you get bright light. Otherwise the carbon will be collecting in a lantern, in a kerosene lamp. Similarly, lot of coatings of vasanas, tendencies, propensities, desires, passions, shadripus, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, kleshas, avidya, aspita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, karma vasana, klesha vasana, they are all enveloping that. And that is why we are not getting the inner light and we depend upon external lights. So that is the prakasha avaranam. Pranayam, that is reduced. So pranayam doesn't give you good biological health and good psychological health, good physical, physiological, organic health and good metabolic, cellular metabolic health, or psychological and mental health, cerebral mind health, temporal mind health, empirical mind health. That is not being offered. So understand where pranayam will be working. Unlike it works in popular yoga, pop yoga. For a while you feel wonderful, you feel seventh heaven after a good pranayam session. but again you are back to square one. But the pranayam is going to work on a greater depth. And dharanasmucha yogyataha manasaha. The pranayam will render your mind fit for dharana and onward practices. That is the antaranga yoga, antaranga sadhan of yoga. There is bahiranga sadhana of yoga, which are 5 yamas to pratyahar, including pranayam, and then onwards is antaranga sadhan, which is dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So it opens out that the portal for dharana etc. processes. That is why by pranayam yogi is going to get those faculties operative, which are antaranga yoga, which are dharana, dhyan, samadhi yoga, which is samadhi yoga. So it is a qualifier. If pranayam leads to dharana, we know that the onward process is dharana to dhyana to samadhi. Because the 3 put together is called samyama, and the 3 will come together in yoga. Mere dharana will not have terminal without a passage into dhyana. Without passage of dhyana into samadhi, the dhyana will not be accomplished. So they are more integral processes, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, and pranayam is a corridor. It lays a corridor to dharana. Therefore, dharana sucha yogyataha manasaha. Dharana yogyatvam, qualification for dharana etc. by pranayam. So pranayam is a straight kind of corridor towards the antaranga yoga, which is dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So it's already altogether different purpose, function of pranayam than we commoners deem the effect of pranayam. We want some temporary goodness of the mind, temporary relaxed condition of the mind. Like every day we want to have a good sleep and then wake up in the morning and do the same nonsense of life. Every night we want a good sleep, sound sleep. And why? Get up and continue the nonsense of our business activity of life. Similar is the case of popular yoga. You want to have that wellness, for you to feel tangible wellness, and then so that you can continue the nonsense of life, business activity of life. But yoga is a paramartha sadhana. Therefore, it is a corridor, it lays a corridor. Now, therefore, understand it's a continuous process by implication from pranayam to the samadhi itself. Pranayam to samadhi, it's a continuous process. Any interruption, you have to come to starter point. You can't commence from there onwards. You'll have to again come back to pranayam. And then pranayam by pranayam, go for culturing the senses, give them touchstone effect to senses, have pratyahar in place. Because without pratyahar being effected, you can't expect dharana, dhyan, samadhi to take place. So it implies that from pranayam you get pratyahar. When he says from pranayam you get qualified for dharana. Why does he say you get qualified for dharana? That means it implies that you get pratyahar. So through pranayam we must try to understand how the pranayam will effectively constitute pratyahara. And in some of the previous sessions I told you about pratyahara. So the senses must be withdrawn, senses must be taken for a higher purpose, spiritual function. So the pratyahar is outcome of pranayam. Okay. So pranayam will give you pratyahar, and it doesn't mean that your pranayama is ended and pratyahar is still continuing. So as long as pranayam is there, pratyahar will be on. If the pranayam gets revoked, your pratyahar will get revoked. If you put a question why your pranayam got revoked, you will see the answer is in pratyahar revoked. So pranayam revoked means pratyahar revoked. So therefore there is a continuum implied. Pranayam to pratyahar to dharana to dhyan to samadhi. So it is one continuous process without interruption, without division. It is not that sometimes pranayam ends and pratyahar comes, therefore pranayam has ended, and then pratyahar ends and dharana comes, and then dharana ends and dhyana comes, dhyana ends and samadhi comes. That is not the way it happens. So pranayam it opens out the portal for the subsequent journey in yoga. You can't get into pratyahar without taking recourse to pranayam. You can't embark upon dharana, dhyan, samadhi without taking recourse to pranayam. That's the first gate, and it gives you corridor for onward processes. So this is what we have to understand here, that the pranayam is going to lead us towards pratyahar and the meditativity of yoga. Now you should understand, I told you that I am not going to tell you about the third kind of dhyana which Patanjali has mentioned. I just mentioned two kinds of dhyana which Patanjali had mentioned. I said I am not going to tell you about the third kind of dhyana, which is the seventh limb of yoga. I kept it in reservation because I wanted you to get oriented to pranayam, a basic information about pranayam, and you to understand that how there is a continuity or continuum from pranayam to onward processes of yoga, which is pratyahar, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. So, understand the threshold condition of pranayam. From pranayam onwards, the inward journeys and further journeys will take place. So all meditative practices of yoga, of the nature of the seventh kind of limb of yoga, the dhyana, quintessential dhyana of yoga, will always invariably will be launched on pranayam of some form or the other. You can't say I will practice pranayam in the morning and then straight away I will go for dhyana in the evening. You can't have such a division. Even if you are embarking upon meditative practices, it must be launched on pranayam. That is without exception. Without exception at any hierarchy. Any hierarchy. Underline this. It will always commence with pranayam. Now, how is this process? Let's try to have a gross understanding, overview of this process. It starts with gross pranayam. Gross pranayam means the breath regulated, pranic breath regulated, etc., etc. Or breath with a pranic kriya, we go for sub-regulations. So that's the grosser pranayam, which is explained to you in earlier session. Desha paridrushtata, kala paridrushtata, sankhya paridrushtata. Now, such pranayam should lead you towards the subtler pranayam. In subtler pranayam, one will take recourse to Om. This is so important in essential pranayam. Many of you will only think that there is no pranayam without in breath and without out breath and without retention. It will never occur to your mind that the Om is so important in pranayam for it to become subtler pranayam which en route to dharana dhyan samadhi, pratyahar dharana dhyan samadhi. So incorporation of the Om, incorporation of the Nama, incorporation of the Ekakshara mantra is so important. That is why if you have little understanding of the mantra shastra, all the mantras of these deities, there is always a Om before the name of the deity or before that Ashtakshara mantra, Shadakshara mantra, Panchakshara mantra, Dvadashakshara mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Whether it is Ganesha or Dattatreya or Shakti or Lakshmi, Om will be invariably there. So once you understand the Om at a greater depth of its purport, then you will understand why Om is there. Every deity takes pride in attaching Om to its name. That is why Om Namah Shivaya. That is why Om Namo Narayanaya. That is why Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Krishnaya. Om Namo Dattatreya. Any deity, Ganesha, or any personal deity, Narsimha, any personal deity, the Om comes. Every deity proudly attaches Om to its name, be that Ganesha, be that Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Saraswati, Devi. So that will open out the realm of subtle pranayam. And that subtle pranayam will cast a spell of pratyahar. The sublimation process will be exalted by the nama, by the mantra, and by the Om. Many of you might be familiar with that concept of Soham sadhana. Soham sadhana. What is that Soham? Sa comes for in breath, then comes O, and then comes H for out breath, and M of Om. Om. So Sa, O, H, M is Soham sadhana. Sa inhalation, H post inhalative, H exhalative, and M post exhalative. So that is Soham sadhana. So Om is there. In breath, out breath is there. The pranic component is there. So subtle pranayam will commence with Om and personal deity, name of the personal deity. And that Om is actually the master key of all samadhis. When you will hear about samadhi, Om is a master key. All samadhis, there are several samadhis, Vitarkanugata, Vicharanugata, Anandanugata, Asmitanugata, Asampargnata. All samadhis are launched by Om. That's the master key. That is why it is called Ekakshara mantra, it is called Maha mantra, it is called Mahabija mantra. So that will open up the realm of Dharana Dhyan Samadhi. And then pranayama will smoothly transform into those. So let me tell you here, pranayam transforms the chitta into pratyaharic state, or it transforms the yogi into pratyaharic state. Pranayam itself transforms the yogi into dharana state. Pranayam itself transforms the yogi into dhyana state. And then pranayam itself transforms the yogi into samadhi state. This is a continual process. Continuum, continuity is there. And these are the stages, unbroken, undivided. Sthula pranayam, sukshma pranayam, onkara pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So, like a train which has so many bogies, but we know that all the bogies have come from one origin and are going to the same destination. Whether it is first bogie of the train or last bogie of the train, they are going to reach the same destination. They are going to go by same routes. There is no change of routes for a couple of bogies in the initial couple of bogies, and then another route for middle couple of bogies, and another route for last couple of bogies. It is one and the same route from origin to terminal station. So it's a continual process. The train is a continuity from engine to guard at the end. So it's one train. It's a flow. Similarly, it's a train. Sthula pranayam, sukshma pranayam, onkar pranayam, pratyahara pranayam, pratyaharik pranayam, then dharana phase, then dhyana phase, and samadhi phase. So the pranayam is for that samadhi wisdom. The pranayam of yoga is not just to relax mind. It is not just to give a cosmetic treatment to mind. But the pranayam is going to result into jnana, adhyatma jnana. And that is how it will burn out all the doshas which are obstructing samadhi process. Pranayame dahair doshan. Mundaka Upanishad and Markandeya Purana. You can be citing this verse there. Pranayame dahair doshan. What are these doshas? As I just now told you, vasanas, kleshas, karmas, desires, lust, greed, passion, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, avidya, aspita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, karma vasana, klesha vasana. So these are the defects which are burnt out. That is why Patanjali rightfully said that the effect of pranayam is by prakasha varnam kshayaha. Prakasha varna kshayaha. Prakasha varna is jnana varnam, is the covering or clouding of jnana, spiritual jnana. That is driven away by pranayam. So pranayam gives jnana, adhyatmik jnana, paramartha jnana, not a cosmetic state of relaxed mind, quiet mind, fresh mind, released mind, so that it can again get engaged into nonsense of business of life. So, and you have byproducts, which again the Shastras have mentioned. If that is going to happen, so many things are going to happen. If the finest of the things or more inclusive thing is going to happen, so many things are going to happen because the effect is so inclusive, so comprehensive. So therefore there are various quotations which come in the text. Skanda Purana says, Yoginaha siddhim apannaha samyak prana niyantranat. Yogi attains all those siddhis by prana niyantrana. So in spiritual pursuit, pranayama is so important. Don't come under the influence of neo-cults Neo Jnana, Neo Vedanta, Neo Bhakti, where they don't identify the contribution of the breath and the Shwasa and Prana. So Bhakti thinks it is just by devotion, the Jnani thinks it's just by Jnana. So that is Neo Jnana Yoga, Neo Karma Yoga, Neo Bhakti Yoga, Neo Adi Yoga. But there are so many fruits which come by this great fruit which pranayam gives. It's more pervasive effect, you see. If you get 100 rupees, you can't say I am deprived of 1 rupee and 2 rupees and 3 rupees. Because 100 rupees includes 1 to 10 to 20 to 30, 40, 50 to 99 rupees. 100 includes up to 99. You can't say 100 is there but I don't have 1. 100 includes 1. So more pervasive the fruit, more inclusive it is. Therefore, all the pranayam gives that ultimate knowledge or the spiritual knowledge. Naturally, so many fruits will come. So therefore, the Shastras have also mentioned that. And in spiritual process, the prana is so important. Breath is so important. You will identify the importance of this in Upanishadic Vidyas and not Neo-Vedantic Vidyas. Neo-Vedanta is having good thought, good memory of Upanishads, good memory of Brahma Sutra Siddhanta. It's all intellectual process, cerebral process. So Neo-Jnana, Neo-Vedanta is very, very, very cerebral. But actual Vedanta, practical Vedanta, will never look down upon prana, pranayama, pranayamic processes. So, yoginam siddhimapannaha samyak prana niyantranat, says Skanda Purana. Agni Purana says, arogyam shighraгаmitvam utsaha swarasausthavam. Arogyam shilagamitvam utsaha swarasausthavam. Swarasausthavam means good voice. See, good voice is a byproduct. That doesn't mean pranayam is done for good voice, but you get good voice by pranayam. So also, arogyam. The pranayam is not for arogyam. Arogyam is by pranayam. You should not seek arogya by pranayam. Arogya will be attained by pranayam. It's a byproduct. So also utsaha, that spiritedness, enthusiastic mind, spirited mind. So also balavarna, prasadachya, sarvadosha kshaya phalam. Pranayam gives all these avantara phalas. It implies that you should not do pranayam for avantara phalas. Avantar phalas come by pranayam. Then Vayu Purana says, pranayamena yuktasya viprasya niyatatmanaha sarve doshaha pranashyanti sattvasthaishaiva jayate. So you become sattvastha. This is essential fruit. Sarva dosha pranashyati. This is essential fruit. Pranayamena yuktasya viprasya niyatatmanaha. Person becomes more regulated. This is a byproduct. So you should understand what are the byproducts of pranayam and what are the essential effects of pranayam. So also what are the byproducts of yoga and essential effects of yoga. Then Amritanada Upanishad has a quotation. Yatha parvatadhatunam doshan dahyate dhamanatmana tatendriya kruta dosha dahyante prananigrahat. Mountainous defects that we have in us. Shatripus, kleshas, vasanas, these are mountainous defects in us. They are all countered by pranayam. Pranayamena chittam shuddham bhavati. Darshanopanishad. So, the Shastras have mentioned so many effects of pranayam. You should identify which is a contingent effect resultant effect and which is targeted effect. So now if you have understood, pranayam can even bestow samadhi. Pranayam can effectualize into samadhi. Therefore dhyana, therefore dharana, therefore pratyahara. So such is the scope of pranayam in classical sense of the term. So classical pranayam mentions all that this pranayam is not for the corporeal body to be purified, cerebral mind to be purified, but it is for chitta shuddhi. It goes far beyond in the realm of even esoteric aspects of our embodiment, and therefore pranayam is such a great sadhana. And pranayam is really a very great portal for the essential yoga, uh, quintessential yoga. So, for more detailed studies, we'll have to again understand what is Puraka Rechaka, what is Kumbhaka, what is the difference between Shwasa and Puraka, Prachwasa and Rechaka. So, there are so many things that we need to study. But I just wanted to relate to you. I went through all these panchakoshas and long delineation of pranayam to merely tell you that pranayam is the source of all dhyana. There is going to be a unique kind of dhyana, which is the Ashtanga dhyana, which is yogika dhyana. The ones so far considered were not necessarily yogic dhyanas. So this is the yogic dhyana, or the dhyana that comes as a seventh limb of Ashtanga Yoga. How does it happen? It is through pranayam. Pranayam is the gateway. Pranayam is the outer gate. Various layers of pranayam are the corridors. And there is a pranayamic corridor laid up until you reach the dhyana. If your dhyana is revoked, your pranayama is revoked. If your pranayama is revoked, your dhyana is revoked. There is concomitance of pranayam of a particular nature while it is dhyana. So dhyana is a kind of pranayam. Dhyana is a kind of pranayam. Tatra pratyekatanata dhyanam is the definition of that seventh limb of dhyana. It is a kind of pranayam. Dharana is a kind of pranayam. Deshabadha chittasya dharana is the definition of dharana. It is a kind of pranayam. Pratyahara of what kind? Svavishaya asamprayoge chitta swarupanukara ivai indriyanam pratyaharaha is the kind of pratyahar needed in the Ashtanga channel. There are several pratyaharas which I related to you while dealing with pratyahar. So, pratyahar of as a yoganga, as the fifth limb of yoga, is kind of pranayam. Dharana as a sixth limb of Ashtanga Yoga is a kind of pranayam. Dharana as a seventh limb of Ashtanga is a kind of pranayam. Samadhi as the eighth limb of yoga is again a kind of pranayam. So try to understand, imagine just the scope, visualize the scope of pranayam, rather than merely in breath and out breath, how far it can go. Otherwise, our idea is in breath, out breath is pranayam, some retention is pranayam. If you inhale particularly in particular way, you say it is pranayam. If you exhale in particular way, you say it is pranayam. If you retain the breath in particular way, you say it is pranayam. But understand this dimension of it. Pranayam itself transformed into pratyahara. So it's a kind of pranayam. Pranayam itself transformed to dharana. So it's a kind of pranayam. Pranayam itself is transformed into dhyana. So therefore itself it is a pranayam. And samadhi also similarly. It is a kind of pranayam. Even in samprajnata samadhi, there will be a kind of pranayam. There is one kind of pranayam for vitarkanugata, another kind of pranayam for vicharanugata, another kind of pranayam for anandanugata, another kind of pranayam for asmitanugata, another kind of pranayam for dharmamega samadhi, another kind of pranayam for asamprajnata samadhi. So that is the extent of pranayam. Just try to visualize what must be pranayam. So with that, we come to the end of pranayam. So from pranayam scope, we need to understand dhyana of Patanjali. The third kind of dhyana which Patanjali has mentioned, which I refer to, it is a extended pranayam of Patanjala pranayam. So with that, we come to the end of delineation on pranayam. At this kind of preliminary course, we are dealing with very preliminary course of classical yoga. And also, just with a hint that Patanjali's dhyana, Ashtanga dhyana, is nothing but extended process of pranayam. Therefore, there are several stages of pranayam, several levels of pranayam, several hierarchies of pranayam, several grades of pranayam. So with that, we end the session. Namaskar.